Okay, I'll start from the top. I'm just a courier, and after I received word of this order that went through 3 companies to get to me, clearly someone trying to cover their tracks, and I was given a hush bonus, I said fuck it, why not? That's how I ended up delivering that box to the mansion. No, I never saw what was in the box, but judging from the setup at the place, I'm guessing it was something computery. So the guy who answers the door is a butler-looking fella. Looks normal, if a bit pale and out of a comic book, but I just hand over the box and ask for a signature. But he eyes me up and down. He asks me to come inside for my bonus. I've already received 1 bonus, but hell, what's another? So in I go. The butler wanders off and someone else comes back. A maid this time. She asks me if I want a drink. I tell her I'm cool. I just want my money and to get out. The maid goes away and the butler emerges again. I'm developing a funny feeling. He hands over an envelope of cash and asks if I want to see the gear in this place. Thing is, I've never been a tech head, but I decide to look anyway. As he takes me through the house, I see servers, computers, cables all over the damn place. It's a fire trap. I reach out to move one aside as I think my bag will catch on it. That's when it happens. The butler turns around and he shrieks at me to touch nothing. His face shifts before my eyes, his body too. He turns into this scaly little slime of a man, and then he's the maid. And he's the butler again, and then he's someone different, and then he's running away into all the shadow I suddenly notice around this place. I get the fuck out. So yeah, the guy's name was Meropus. A weird thing, I checked out the mansion again a week later, and it was completely empty and dusty. Like it's been vacant for decades. Stealth mode. Cloaking, or occulto. Whatever name you call it, Obfuscate is an amazing gift. I've always said that the Nosferatu have a wonderful power set, being animalism, obfuscate, and potence. And if I was ever going to play a caitiff, I'd probably take those without thought. The power of Obfuscate, though, gives you so many capabilities, and V5 has opened it up in such a strange array that gives us some pretty interesting qualities, and I cannot wait to go over those with you today. So, let's learn about Obfuscate. For any hunter, the ability to hide, move without being seen, and employ camouflage proves vital. For the Kindred practitioners of Obfuscate, the discipline provides the perfect cover to get close to a victim, disguise themselves as harmless, and escape when the heat grows too much. Obfuscate experts may utilize the discipline to lurk in the shadows while spying, change appearances in a crowd while under surveillance, or even spread the gift to a group of vampires looking to hide. The way that they describe Obfuscate in this is so cool, and I remember the very first time I ever really used it, I was playing a Malkavian. I just feel like the Storyteller was not as versed as I would have hoped in a discipline. I was a neonate, I was newly embraced, and I was talked into taking on the appearance using the discipline power Mask of 1,000 Faces of the Seneschal, who was very untrusted, but the other Malkavians had talked me into doing this to, actually I'm saying it backwards. I was talked into taking the appearance of one of the prince's advisors. He didn't actually have a role in the city, but I was talked into doing it to trick the Seneschal into doing something. It failed miserably, and the reason it failed is because my clothes didn't change. I don't know if those were the rules back then or not, but it was ridiculous. It was ridiculous because I did not dress in any way the same way this guy did. So it was obvious that I wasn't him. And there was no, do I even get a test? It was just a, I don't believe you. And, which sucked because, I was new to the game, but it was funny. But the way that obtenebration can be used is so vital when you're playing a character that needs to use the darkness in and of itself. So, characteristics of the discipline. Obfuscate powers work through ambient, low-level mesmerism. Observers see the vampire, but their mind choose to ignore it. Witnesses unconsciously move out of the way if the user blocks their path and rationalize their behavior if pressed. Obfuscate affects all 5 senses, unless otherwise noted. The discipline does have limits. The illusion fails if the observer cannot ignore the user or if the user blocks the observer into a corner. A vampire blocking a doorway cannot maintain obfuscate against someone walking through it. Likewise, violent actions jeopardizes the facade, as does actions like raised voices, failed pickpocket attempts, and weapons raised to strike. Whispering without breaking obfuscate is still possible. That is nice. That is a nice thing to be able to do. Generally, the discipline offers no protection against machine surveillance. A human staking out a vampire has a hard time pointing the lens in the right direction, but automatic cameras and other types of detectors can catch them. A vampire with Sense the Unseen, Auspex 1, can detect an obfuscated character by rolling Wits or Resolve plus Auspex versus Wits plus Obfuscate. Anyone can detect an obfuscated vampire who draws attention to themselves. Such observers detect accidental revelations with a contest of Wits plus Awareness or Resolve plus Awareness for an active searcher versus Wits plus Stealth. This also applies to surprise attacks from Obfuscate. A victim always has a chance to sense danger a moment before the strike. That's really nice. I do like the way that this is being handled. It's a lot easier than the way things used to be. And the funny thing is, it's easier for both the people who are trying to detect and the people who are trying not to be detected. So, not really sure how they gained that balance compared to what they used to do, but it does tend to work really, really well. The type of discipline is mental. The masquerade threat is low. Avoiding detection is the whole point of this discipline. Blood resonance, melancholic. The ignored and unseen. The homeless, forgotten, and depressed. Spies, pickpockets, excellent servants, roadies, and stagehands, and all the background people. I really like the fact... I love blood resonance. I think that is such an awesome thing. I will admit that as a storyteller, it's not the easiest thing to just pop up with a blood resonance off the top of your head for a random person who gets grabbed in an alley. But it does help out a lot to be able to do that kind of thing, especially when you're coming to people who are trying to buy powers based on what they're eating. So the idea of this mass amount of people being considered, like it says the ignored and unseen, but it gives you a whole bunch of stuff here. Homeless people, spies, people who suffer from depression, people who try to not be seen because they're thieves, roadies and stagehands, the people who make it so that the people who are on stage can do their job without being noticed. This is a really good way of putting that, and I appreciate it. I do appreciate this. So let's dig into the actual discipline levels then. Level 1, Cloak of Shadows. Standing perfectly still, the user blends into the surroundings. As long as they have some kind of cover, make no sound and don't move. Only mechanical and supernatural means can detect them. Cost, free. System. Follow the general rules of Obfuscate. The effect lasts until the user moves or they are detected by other means. Duration, 1 scene. I've always hated this level of Obfuscate. I've always found it really pointless. To be able to... But, you know what? I have to say that I've watched LA by Night. And Alexander Ward plays a character named Jasper, who's a Nosferatu on that. And I fucking love every application he ever uses of Obfuscate. It's done so well. And like, I think it's after the first season they actually pick up a little bit of editing in their production where he actually becomes transparent whenever he uses Obfuscate, and I fucking love it. But he uses Cloak of Shadows so much because there's no cost. And the next level, Unseen Passage, has a rouse check. Now that we have costs for Obfuscates and the difference between spending blood and then maybe spending blood because of rouse checks, Cloak of Shadows makes so much more fucking sense, and I love it. I love the fact that there's actual practical reason to use that over Unseen Passage. I really do like that, and enough fangirling. Level 1 also, Silence of Death. Popular among Banu Hakim, this power completely silences the user, nullifying all sound made by them. As with other Obfuscate powers, this only works on people within earshot and does not fool microphones or other electronic sound detectors. Unlike Obfuscate in general, this power works only on the sense of hearing, but in exchange operates more robustly. A vampire needs to make a whole lot of noise to break this silence. Cost: free. System: the user silences their footsteps, clothing, minor collisions, and other sounds of their person. This makes the vampire undetectable if the observer can only notice them by sound, such as when on a different floor of a house. This power does not eliminate sounds the user makes outside their personal space, throwing or dropping objects or slamming doors, for example. Failing that, only sense of the unseen, Aspects 1, can detect the user. Duration: 1 scene. I saw this and I was thrown off. The first time when I was on my phone looking through the PDF version of these disciplines, because that's what I wanted. I wanted to see these new disciplines. When I saw Silence of Death was an Obfuscate power and not a Quietist power anymore, I was like, the fuck is this? And I really expected somewhere on there for it to say Banu Hakim only or some shit like that. But I do like the fact that it is most common among the Banu Hakim. But the idea that other vampires can learn it makes a lot of sense. Because be able to travel in complete stealth, like a cat, makes a lot of sense for predators. And whenever I thought about playing an Assamite back in the day, before the Banu Hakim were a thing, I always wanted to play a sorcerer. And the idea of Silence of Death being used in a sorcery setting so that you could do your work without causing any exterior noise was always so interesting to me. But I can think of so many reasons why Nosferatu would want Silence of Death. I can think of so many reasons why this would come in handy for, like, Setites, for the Ministry. Obfuscate is such a fun power, and the way that it's utilized now has just brought in so much to the game. Level 2, Unseen Passage. With this power, the vampire can now move around while staying hidden. The user is fucked. Level 2, Unseen Passage. With this power, the vampire can now move around while staying hidden. The user is functionally invisible, per the usual Obfuscate limitations. Cost: 1 rouse check. System: as long as the user emits no overpowering odors and no sound louder than a whisper, this power automatically works. Only if the observer has their attention drawn to user can they make a detection roll. Since the unseen, Aspects 1, can also detect the hidden vampire as per general Obfuscate rules. Note that the user cannot use this power to disappear while being actively observed. It automatically fails in such cases. Duration: 1 scene or until detection. Again, this right here is my thought is one of the more basic levels of Obfuscate. Being able to do what you need invisibly makes a lot of sense, but like if I can see I can see the step of progression in both the Cloak of Shadows or even Silence of Death to Unseen Presence. But Unseen Presence does it's not something that I think could be overlooked, in my opinion. Let's see. Level 3, Ghost in the Machine. The user can now transmit the effects of Obfuscate through electronic media, allowing the vampire to appear invisible or masked when viewed live on screens. If the observer views the image later, as in a photograph or recording, the effect lessens. The image seems slightly blurred, making identification hard. In addition, automated surveillance has the tendency to glitch in the presence of the vampire, lessening their chance of being caught by automated systems. Cost. No additional cost, it just transfers straight over. System. No additional role is required when being viewed on a live feed. Treat observers as present with the vampire. With regards to the discipline, the observer adds +3 to their difficulty on tests to identifying the user on film, video, in photographs, or the like taken during active obfuscation. The user also gains 3 additional dice to pools they use when trying to circumvent automated electronic surveillance and countermeasures. Duration as power used. I like this one because the in the original system that I played in, the very first level of Obfuscate and the very first level of Obtenebration were identical. Cloak of Shadows. Being able to hide without moving in shadows was actually both Obfuscate and Obtenebration, and I love the fact because it really felt like in that system they were not using like mesmerism to hide. They weren't using an unconscious version of hypnotism like they are in V5. They were literally hiding in the shadows themselves. And I think this was reinforced big time when I read I believe it's the Giovanni clan novel, when Benito Giovanni is kidnapped by a group of what he thought were Assamites at the time, but actually ended up just being a bunch of Nosferatu assholes. But it describes their Obfuscate stopping and how they just melt out of the shadows. Like, the shadow literally melts off of them and they're visible. So I always took that as an Obfuscate and Obtenebration were around the same discipline. And this level of Obfuscate, it basically seems to give you the bane of Clan La Sombra. So basically, this level of Obfuscate kind of gives a callback to that, because this level of Obfuscate mimics the bane of Clan La Sombra, where it starts fucking with security cameras and stuff, and I do enjoy that. I see that as a callback. I don't know if it is, but it is for me. It's a nice little Easter egg, regardless of whether or not anybody else is hunting for it. So, the next level 3, Mask of 1,000 Faces. Instead of disappearing, the vampire using this power can make themselves appear as a nondescript stranger, someone expected to be present in the area. Unlike other Obfuscate powers, this allows the user to interact and communicate with those they might run into. They arouse little suspicion as long as their presence is at all plausible, meaning that it will not fool people who do not expect anyone or would be hostile against anyone they didn't know. This power also does not provide any personal identification or other ways of misleading an identity. Cost, 1 rouse check. System, no test required. Anyone viewing the vampire sees a forgettable face of the same gender and approximate build and height as the user. Clothing take on the same kind of blandness, depending on the environment. At an office, the user might appear as a night watchman, while they may seem to wear overalls at an assembly plant. Since the unseen, Auspex level 1, can pierce the power as usual. Duration 1 scene. That's so fun because it's not as forgiving as what I'm used to. This discipline is actually worse for the person using it, but more plausible to actually be used. And I find it to be a fun little mix of both Mask of a Thousand Faces that I grew up with, I guess I'll put that way, the what I was trained into, and also the Mask of a Thousand equivalent. I don't actually know if that's the power, but the Masquerade, or the Mask of a Thousand Faces equivalent in the Requiem discipline. The way that it was described to me with Requiem was like if you decided that you're going to break in and feed on a babysitter who's watching some children, and you have this power and this is in Requiem, and you open the door, they will see the person they expect to see. Like, you don't have the ability to this is what we used to do for Mask of a Thousand Faces, to say that we were wearing somebody else's face. Instead of going, I'm walking in as such and such person, if the person's sitting there calmly watching the couch and you would happen to steal a key, or you know there's a key under the mat, and you use it and they hear that key, they're going to go, oh, the parents are home. And when you walk in the door, they'll see the dad or they'll see the mom. And I always thought that was so cool because you don't actually have any control over it. And in this one, it's around the same bet. See, with this, you could possibly fuck with people in a way, because there are certain people, there are certain things that certain people do that give away who they are when walking. If you are, like it says, if you are coming in pretending to be a security guard, if you walk around knowing that there's somebody in the other room and you jingle keys, that might put them in the mindset of security guards coming around the corner. Jingling keys is the universal sign for sound of security guards. Therefore, blah. But yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's lots of other things that you guys could come up with, but I like this better than the old version of I'm gonna become Jim and I'm a well-known mechanic. Like, the idea of being able to actually take on the persona, the traits of that person. I mean, I took advantage of it, but there's so many things you could do to fuck with people. And when you're thinking of that mixed with Ghost in the Machine, that's fucked up. You know what I would do? If I was playing a neonate character who had no money of his own, and I had Obfuscate, and I took Mask of a Thousand Faces and Ghost in the Machine, what I would do is I would turn myself into a manager to a privately owned nightclub, walk in when I know he's not there, acting like I'm him, walk in, get all the money out of the safe, flick off the camera, and leave because they'd see me as that person. But again, that's why I like this, is because it takes away a lot of the stupid cartoony shit that you can do with the old Mask of a Thousand Faces, but it makes you have to think, and I really appreciate shit that makes you think. Level 4. Our first amalgam for Obfuscate. Conceal. Amalgam Auspex 3. This ability allows the user to cloak an inanimate object such as a door, a car, or a small house. As with other Obfuscate powers, this does not actually make the object invisible, but creates a lingering, hypnotic effect that causes most people to simply ignore it. In this case, the power is especially effective given that the object is unlikely to call attention to itself unless something causes passerbys to collide with it or someone points it out. People behave as if the object wasn't there, moving around larger objects if need be. Cost: 1 rouse check. Dice pool: intelligence plus Obfuscate. System: the vampire touches the object and rolls a test of intelligence plus Obfuscate against the difficulty from 2, concealing a ring in the drawer filled with other memorabilia, to 6, concealing a house in the middle of an open square. Depending on the target's size and location, the power lasts for 1 night. Each point of margin on a win conceals the object for an additional night. This power conceals anyone and anything inside the object, people in a car or shed, as long as the viewer remains outside. This power cannot affect anything larger than a 2-story house or any object moving under its own power, such as a moving car. Someone with Auspex power sense the unseen, or equivalent, can notice the object by winning a contest of wits plus Auspex versus intelligence plus Obfuscate of the user. Duration, 1 night, with an additional night per point of margin on the win. Again, and I'm jumping into Requiem on this one again. There used to be a power called Conceal in Requiem, where if you took like a gun or something and put it in your pocket and you were being frisked, you could not be noticed. And that actually carried over to V20. And that was, by the way, my absolute favorite thing they did in V20 was the fact that they brought my favorite level of Obfuscate from another game into that one. And I'm so glad they brought it here, but they put it on fucking steroids. I can make a 2-story house disappear? Jesus fucking Christ. I do like it. I do like it. I'm not complaining at all. The idea of being able to make shit vanish is very interesting like that, or conceal things. I don't want to say vanish because that's the next level. That's the next level. But I actually think that I know the inspiration for this. A few years ago, Alec Baldwin, a few years ago, I'm showing my age. Back before I wasn't really old, Alec Baldwin played in a movie called The Shadow, which was based on an old radio show. It's really, really fucking cool. And it was one of it was a toe dip into the waters of superhero genre movies. And it was really cool. I really wish it could have become a franchise. It was on the same level as that Billy Zane Phantom movie. But again, it was based off a radio show. It was really cool. And it was about this dude who was like rich beyond fucking belief and like learned Tibetan mysticism or some shit like that, and like used his powers of Obfuscate and Obtenebration, not even fucking joking on that one, to fight crime and to make up for the fact that he was a lousy sack of shit as a human being before he became a superhero. So in that movie, however, the main villain is hiding out in a concealed building. And it's a big ass fucking like almost like skyscraper. But what he did was he put chain link fence around it and demolition signs so that people expected it to be torn down. He psychically hypnotized the entire fucking town to not notice that the building was still there. And I think that's really, really cool. And it really feels like that's the kind of shit that's going on here. And I love it. I love it. I think that's really cool. I like the fact that that kind of thing was brought in. And like, this is the kind of thing where as a storyteller, there are no rules for this, but as a storyteller, I would say like, oh, if an entire coterie with Obfuscate and Conceal got together, they could all decide that they were gonna make 2 floors of a high-rise invisible. And then, like, if you have enough people, the entire building vanishes. Or, like, maybe if you were an elder or something like that, and if you decided to say fuck the beckoning rules and that you were playing an 8th generation or something like that, you could, like, choose to make bigger and bigger things. Like, there's so many different things you can do with this, and I like the fact that they did this. I like where I think that it came from. And check out the movie if you haven't seen it. It's pretty good. Also level 4, Vanish. Prerequisite, Cloak of Shadows. The vampire can activate Cloak of Shadows and Unseen Passage even while under direct observation. The vampire appears to vanish in the blink of an eye. Even the memory of them becomes foggy. and indistinct. Cost, as per the power augmented. Dice pool, wits plus obfuscate versus wits plus awareness. System, when vanishing in front of a mortal, roll a contest of wits plus obfuscate versus wits plus awareness. On a win, the observer questions whether the vampire was ever there to begin with. Their memory clouds on the topic. With a critical win, the vampire vanishes entirely from the observer's memory. This power does not affect vampires' memories, but any win by the user hides them as if they initiated their power unobserved. This power can only be used once per scene. Duration, as per power augmented. Vanish is fun, and to me, it was always Vanish from the mind's eye. The ability to just go, hey, guess what? I'm not here. Fuck you, is so fun. And there's so many things that you can do with it. I personally enjoy doing that all the time and scaring the shit out of people. And it's so easy to do. All you really have to do is put your mind to it. And then when you come back, it's just interesting and a lot of fun to do. It's one of those fun things that just carries over, I think. Level 5, Cloak the Gathering. The vampire can shelter their companions under the cloak of Obfuscate. Cost, 1 rouse check, in addition to the cost of the power extended. System, the vampire can extend their power of Obfuscate to a number of additional willing subjects equal to their wits, plus 1 for each additional rouse check made. The Obfuscate power used on the group can be any known by the user, and every member of the group count as having used it themselves, using the Obfuscate vampire's rating as their own when needed for a roll. Members of the group can still perceive each other while under the effect of the power, if anyone besides the user is revealed, either through their own doing or an astute observer. The rest of the group remains hidden. If the user is revealed, so is everyone else. Duration, the power as power extended. That's fun. I like the idea of the whole, like, as long as, like, if the person who actually is using this power gets caught, everybody gets caught. But I like the fact that individual people can get caught. Cloak the Gathering has always been level 5 Obfuscate that I'm used to anyway. And I don't think I've ever gotten it. I don't think I've ever actually bought the 5th level or the advanced level of Obfuscate. But I'm kind of interested to see what the other one is. Imposters Guise. Prerequisite, Mask of 1,000 Faces. With some preparation, the vampire can make themselves appear as a specific individual of any build and gender. The user must carefully study the subject, otherwise the charade fails when meeting anyone with more than casual familiarity with the person being mimicked. Cost, 1 rouse check. Dice pool, wits plus obfuscate, manipulation plus performance. That's interesting. System. The user must study the face to be copied for at least 5 minutes from different angles. The user requires another 10 minutes of observation to mimic the subject's voice and mannerisms. The user can only copy human appearances, not animal forms. The storyteller then makes a hidden test of wits plus obfuscate, difficulty of 4. A failure means that the resemblance is less than convincing, and anyone close to the person copied notices something amiss automatically. A win creates a convincing illusion, but the user must make a manipulation plus performance roll to impersonate speech and mannerisms. A critical win creates a perfect illusion with no further roll necessary. Sense the unseen, Aspects 1 can pierce the mask as per general rules. Duration, 1 scene. So this is very close to the original power, to the original Mask of 1,000 Faces that I'm used to in the other systems. Except for the fact that you actually have to do your damn homework for this. And with the choice between Cloak the Gathering and Imposters Guise, these are two different ways of getting in to mess with people. With Cloak the Gathering, you've got a group of people that you're working with, and you can pass through. With Imposters Guise, on the other hand, this is more of a personal, I'm a spy alone kind of power, and the use of it is very specific because it takes time. That's the kind of shit that if you were playing as Zamitzi and you had Malleable Visage or Changeling for the original Vicissitude, where you actually have to take that time. That's 15 minutes minimum of work to prep to use that discipline for a scene. So that's important shit. That's chameleon level stuff there. That right there. And when I say that, I mean like the Spider-Man villain, the chameleon. That is high stakes espionage. That you have done your fucking homework and you're going in there to wreck some shit as somebody else. And I appreciate the fact that it's not just Mask of 1,000 Faces. Hi, I'm here as the corporate CEO to fuck some shit up. No, you can get fucked on that. You can do it wrong. You can get caught, and you got to be really, really, really careful. And I can see where that can come in handy with clans like Nosferatu and things like that. And here we are several hours later, because I found out while editing that for some reason my recording software decided that I wasn't allowed to talk about this part. But here we are at 12:33 at night, and we are going to cover this because we still have 2 levels of Obfuscate left to cover. Within the Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition companion is Obfuscate used by Clan Ravnos. And that is actually a pretty interesting thing due to the fact that Ravnos have never had Obfuscate. Out of all the clans in Vampire the Masquerade 5th edition, the Ravnos have received the most drastic facelift. And what I mean by that is they keep getting remade over and over and over again. They've been doing that since well before 1999 and the Week of Nightmares, where at first they were known as wandering gypsies. Gypsy became a derogatory term. Understandable. So then they tried to hold them off as being more on an Indian route, but then it was racial stereotyping, and the Ravnos don't exactly have the best history when it comes to things, considering the fact that they're marked as thieves and vice addicts. So, these features have been changed into being more like tricksters and messengers and wanderers, and the need for them to be brought out involving in a specific area of land has been completely abolished. Not only are they from India, but they've got them described as being Native American, as being Norse, as being European in other ways. They're all over the goddamn place now, and I think that is amazing. And for those of you who don't want to give up on the classic World of Darkness stereotype, you don't have to. And I think the dramatic changes that the Ravnos have gone through in storyline very much describes the dramatic changes that they've gone through out of storyline. And what I mean by that is the Week of Nightmares destroyed the clan. I can't even say decimated, because that would mean 10% was left. And that's not what happened. Like, the entire clan was eradicated. There was a handful. It says I've read things that say less than 100 were left. Therefore, as new ones come in, as new vampires are embraced into Clan Ravnos over time, they're going to bring their cultural beliefs. They're going to bring in different aspects of things, and they're no longer just going to be the racial stereotypes that they have been in past editions. Now, that being said, originally, Ravnos always came with animalism, fortitude, and chymistry. The animalism and fortitude was supposed to represent the fact that they were so closely related to Clan Gangrel. There was a bloodline that had aspects over animalism, I believe. I believe they had aspects of fortitude and chemistry. But now things have gone completely off the goddamn deep end, and I'm actually enjoying it very much. I think it makes a lot of sense, and it fits in with the ideals that I have for tricksters. They come with animalism, obfuscate, and presence. And truthfully, any good trickster is going to need presence, and any good trickster is going to need obfuscate. But let's go ahead and hop into what this discipline actually looks like now. Obfuscate level 2, Chymistry, Amalgam Presence 1. The vampire is able to create a brief but vivid hallucination, distracting and drawing the attention of those affected. A hallucination can affect any single sense. It can be visual, audio, tactile, etc., occurring long enough to make an impression before ceasing. The user decides on the specifics of the hallucination. Though, due to its brief nature, it cannot convey more than something glimpsed in the corner of the eye, or a voice faintly heard. It cannot be employed to create a fake ID, for example. Cost, 1 rouse check. Dice pool, manipulation plus obfuscate versus composure plus wits. System. The vampire rolls their manipulation plus obfuscate. Anyone unprepared and within eyesight of the vampire or eligible to experience the hallucination by being in line of sight of its projected appearance or by being the target of a tactile sensation is distracted, losing 2 dice on their next action. Additionally, those who fail to resist using their composure plus wits lose their next active action if they fail. However, they can still defend and resist as normal with a 2 dice penalty. Other effects resulting from hallucinations are up to the storyteller, but they are advised to err on the side of caution. These hallucinations can never be recorded or transmitted, such as by using Ghost in the Machine. Duration, 1 turn. This is my all-time absolute favorite version of Chymistry, and there's only... The reason I've never liked Chymistry, and the reason I've never liked Chymistry, it always felt like you were just kind of stacking. You never really went back to use lower levels of Chymistry. The same issue that I had with Obfuscate on a few cases. But with Chymistry, I always felt that the first level, the third level, and the 5th level were really the only ones worth having. Level 2 and level 4 were just kind of there. They were fillers. They were just to make an excuse on why your person has to spend the same XP as everybody else. And it just kind of, They didn't do much for me. I didn't like them. But with this one, being able to not only commit that to saying that there are hallucinations involved, but also to give you a mechanic of what is actually going to cause the problem in a combat round or in an awareness check. The idea that it's the person is suffering from a 2 trait penalty, and the rest is going to be story. It's going to be up to the storyteller and the person using this to come up with why it's so devastating. I mean, what if a anarch was, any kindred really, but what if an anarch was crossing the street and then out of the corner of their eye they briefly saw their sire who they knew was dead, or somebody who they diablerized, stopping them in their tracks just long enough to not notice the bus barreling down towards them. Like, Obfuscate is it's a very finesse gift. You know, you just really have to have some imagination to cause hallucinations. And the fact that it's your presence projecting your obfuscate hallucinations at someone is just such an interesting way of putting it, and I like it. Level 3, Fata Morgana, Amalgam Presence 2. The vampire can craft elaborate hallucinations, making any subject in their vicinity see, hear, and feel whatever the user can devise. From seeing and tasting a takeout container filled with maggots and rice, to a thunderous turret of reeking, rancid blood boiling out of the sewers, Fata Morgana causes witnesses to experience circumstances that just aren't real. There is no limit to the number of victims who can be affected simultaneously, but in order to be affected by Fata Morgana, the subject needs to be able to see the user or vice versa, though they do not need to actively be aware of them. The vampire does not need to remain present once the victim is affected. Visual effects are always separate objects. They cannot be used to mask or otherwise disguise items or individuals, and can never entirely block the line of sight. Fata Morgana hallucinations cannot appear to affect the surrounding reality. The torrent of blood won't wash away cars parked in the street or pedestrians, and an explosion created with Fata Morgana will not cause any damage, hallucinatory or otherwise. A collapsing staircase won't tumble anyone currently descending the staircase. Sensory effects created by Fata Morgana cannot blind or deafen or in any other way overload senses, not even those supernaturally augmented. Similarly, hallucinations are not caught on camera or other kinds of recording devices. Cost: 1 rouse check. Dice pool, manipulation plus obfuscate. System: the user makes a manipulation plus obfuscate test against the difficulty equal to 1 plus the number of senses the hallucination targets. An audiovisual hallucination would thus be difficulty of 3, while a complete 5 sensory experience would be a difficulty of 6. The easiest visual hallucinations to create are fairly small or discrete. Increase the difficulty by 1 for room-sized hallucinations, 2 for house-sized hallucinations, and so on. Further complications can add additional difficulty, but this is left up to storyteller discretion. Any attempt to mimic the appearance of a specific individual or, in other ways, deceive can require additional performance or subterfuge tests as appropriate. Vampires and other supernatural creatures have a chance to disbelieve the hallucination, but mortals can do this only if they have reason to suspect it to be fake. In both cases, they roll intelligence plus awareness against the user's manipulation plus presence. A success means that the individual in question is no longer affected by the hallucination, and it effectively disappears for them. Any attempt to interact with the hallucination will also cause a lapse entirely, as everyone present will become aware of its unreal nature. As with the collapsing staircase example, if someone is using the staircase, note that the use of this power is not overt, or even if the hallucination is revealed, it is not obvious from whom it originated. The hallucinations can never be recorded or transmitted, such as by using Ghost in the Machine. Duration: 1 scene, unless the vampire chooses to let it lapse before that. Again, this is so fun. The only power that I feel that it's really missing in the whole Chymistry lineup is a horrid reality, the 5th level of Chymistry, where they can get damaged by their own imagination because of the hallucinations you cause. But I digress. But that one you can also see affecting the multiple senses and stuff is very obviously inspired by Lost Boys. I mean, look at the example they gave with the takeout container full of maggots and rice. Marco, Alex Winter's character in Lost Boys, was very obviously a Ravnos because he was able to produce those kinds of things. But there's quite a gap there. Lost Boys came out in 1987, and Vampire the Masquerade came out in 1991. So you can see they had some time to watch those movies. But but it's a very fun, interesting thing to use. It's a very fun, interesting thing to play with, and it's good that there's not that many of them. Truthfully, because a bunch of vampires running around with those powers would just suck. As a storyteller, I'll handle one or two. I don't want to handle an entire coterie of Ravno. So that was our in-depth look at Vampire the Masquerade's invisibility, Obfuscate. If you have any stories of you using Obfuscate or things that you enjoyed doing to mess with other people with this wonderful tricksterish discipline, please put down in the comments below. I'd love to see them. I'd love to have conversations about it. Please like, subscribe, and share, and I will see you next time in our world of darkness. Good evening.